The British Medical Journal reports the findings of a major randomised controlled trial and cost assessment of the Alexander technique. What sorts of problems did the patients who took part have to start with?
A back problem started when I was about 18 years old from an injury doing fireman's carry in Royal Marines exercises, violin playing especially, and standing on parade, but violin playing. I sat using bad habits, and I had to create a way of undoing those problems when my back pain was getting really bad by then.
I had to stop working. I couldn't work. I didn't work for a year because I was in so much pain, and it progressed to the point where walking was difficult, sitting was difficult, so you can imagine primary school teaching was impossible because it involves standing, it involves twisting, it involves being very active, bending with small children. I couldn't do my job.
Occasionally I was sort of on my back for a week at a time, and then the hospital took over and I had traction, and they were threatening me with a corset, and so that didn't sound good to me, and also male vanity was involved. I saw a photograph of myself with shoulders really arched, sort of Neanderthal man.
The Alexander technique is about learning how to become more aware of your body in everyday life and learning to understand the ways in which we often tighten our bodies up, which takes us out of balance. And when we're out of balance, then obviously when we're engaging with different tasks, whatever it might be, lifting chairs or sitting at the office or making the beds or hoovering, whatever, then we need to be able to use our body in a balanced, light way rather than some of the habitual ways that we have learned throughout our lives.
What we do when someone comes to us with back pain, we're looking at the way they use their whole body. We're not looking specifically at the area of them that hurts. We're not looking just at their back. We don't diagnose a specific problem, but we look at how they move. Through my hands, I can feel what muscle pulls are operating in their body whilst they're moving. And that can include things that seem static, like just sitting in a chair. How are they supporting themselves while they're sitting in a chair? I'm looking at all this and I'm helping them to work out how they got into that situation.
When you're born with a natural balance and poise, and coming along for lessons will help you get back in touch with that. So when you watch young children running around and moving freely, we all have that in us potentially. Obviously, as you get much older, then that does begin to change. But there's a lot of balance and freedom available to us, and we just don't realise that half the time.
I got involved in the research through knowing Paul Little. I knew Paul because his wife Alison had had severe back pain, and both Alison and her mother had Alexander lessons. So Paul saw at first hand two people to whom he was very close benefit hugely.
Paul Little was the leading author on both of the BMJ's reports, and he knows such studies must be conducted with scientific rigour.
I would expect people to be sceptical. I'm a sceptical chap myself. I'm a professional researcher as well as being a GP, and you should be sceptical. I think there are a lot of complementary things on offer, and patients and doctors want to know what actually works. And the only real way of showing what works is reasonable research. So I think it's important to have good evidence for both patients and doctors.
An objective measure of disability and pain was used to evaluate the cost-effectiveness of the Alexander technique and other interventions.
The results that we get from it with a large trial are likely to be robust. It's not just 600 patients, it's 600 patients across a whole range of practices in southern England, with getting on for 30 teachers and lots of massage therapists. So you can't attribute these results to just one particularly good enthusiastic teacher.
When Richard came for lessons, his back pain was interfering with his life and his passion, which is playing the violin. So when Richard comes for lessons, what we're going to be looking at are how he uses his body, not just when he's playing the violin, but in everyday simple activities. If you use your body poorly, if you use it with effort, tension and stiffness, then the way your body functions is going to be interfered with. And functions such as mobility, functions such as circulation, functions such as respiration are all interfered with by poor body use.
The first few Alexander technique lessons with added exercise seemed to make a real difference to most subjects.
After the first lesson, I felt completely different, just a great sense of lightness and feel taller, and everything just feels easier. For me, that was the brilliant thing about the technique, that as you keep having lessons, what you learn means that you can really maintain that sense of balance and lightness when you're on your own. What really made sense to me about the technique was the idea that it was something that I was doing myself, and that I could get an awareness of what it was I was doing and stop doing it, basically.
Debbie Sharp was another key author of the BMJ papers.
The way that we used the Alexander technique in the study was very much to give people the opportunity to learn for themselves some ideas how they might look after their back, not just when they're having the lessons, but later on. I think that's why we found an effect at 12 months. People weren't having lessons at 12 months, but if their back problem had persisted, they could use the Alexander technique, or if their back problem had recurred, they could recall the skills and get on and start to do some practicing again.